The latest COVID rules for people arriving in the UK have been heavily criticised by the travel industry. From early on Tuesday, passengers will have to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken no earlier than 48 hours before departing for the UK.
This will be a significant setback for demand this winter, real impacts on Christmas. I think we'll see people now cancelling or postponing travel plans.
We'll have more reaction to the changes and the latest on the new variant of coronavirus. Also today, a vigil in memory of 6-year-old Arthur Hughes, who was tortured and killed by his stepmother and father. Some 4,000 homes are still without power for a second weekend in the wake of Storm Arwen.
Another title for Chelsea, treble winners in 2020.
At Wembley, Chelsea have lifted the Women's FA Cup. They beat Arsenal by 3-0. Good afternoon. The latest changes for travellers arriving in the UK have been heavily criticised by the travel industry, who warned that firms will be devastated. Under the changes, passengers will be required to show proof of a negative PCR or lateral flow test taken no earlier than 48 hours before departing for the UK. The changes will come into effect early on Tuesday morning. Downing Street says the measures are necessary because of the rise in cases of the new variant of coronavirus. The latest country to be added to the travel red list is Nigeria. From tomorrow, travellers to the UK from Nigeria will have to quarantine in a hotel for 10 days. Our business correspondent, Katie Prescott, has this report.
Happy memories of holidays gone by. Dennis and his partner were looking forward to many more smiling pictures. But because of the changes to travel rules, he's thinking of cancelling their upcoming trip to Tenerife.
A lot of it is the uncertainty as well. Do you go on holiday and something changes dramatically again? And I mean, my partner, she would have to self-isolate on the way back for 4 days, and that's a 4 days loss of pay. She doesn't get paid.
And it's those sorts of concerns that are worrying the travel industry.
We believe that this will be a significant setback for demand this winter, real impacts on Christmas. I think we'll see people now cancelling or postponing travel plans. And for a sector that hasn't had any revenue for 18 months, give or take a few months over the summer period, it's really significant indeed. The airlines do not make money in the winter, and so we've got a really difficult stretch ahead of us now.
At London's Heathrow Airport this morning, travellers were pragmatic about the new testing requirements.
Yeah, that obviously definitely adds some inconvenience to my journey, but I totally understand it.
I used to do that anyway, just to come back to be safe. So I think it's a good way to go about it. If it means we avoid a lockdown, definitely worth doing a test. Literally, no skin off anyone's back to just get tested.
Maybe if we were a bigger family, it would have been more of a concern. But right now, it's more of like a cost versus safety thing.
Many of the people travelling from London St Pancras to Europe today will have to take a test when they come home. The big question, though, is how much these changes will stop people travelling, especially over the Christmas period, a time, of course, when people do tend to move around to see their friends and family, because perhaps of the uncertainty involved and the cost. The Deputy Prime Minister says it's better to be safe than sorry.
I think, though, that the worst thing would be to then lurch, having not taken incremental steps that can make a difference, even if it's only at the margins. I think we want to make sure we take those steps earlier, precisely to avoid the bigger disruption to travel and the economy.
The measures will be looked at again in 3 weeks' time. Katie Prescott, BBC News.
Let's have some more on this, because the UK Health Security Agency says that there have been 86 additional confirmed cases of the Omicron variant of coronavirus, bringing the total so far in the UK to 246. So let's discuss some of this with our health correspondent, Catherine da Costa. So, Catherine, when are we likely to know a little more about the potential for damage that this new variant will cause?
Well, scientists in South Africa and the UK are working as fast as possible to gather evidence to help inform decisions on how how we should respond to Omicron. Now, early data from South Africa suggests infections are spreading more quickly than in previous waves, and there's a higher risk of reinfection among those who've already had COVID. And most cases are mild, but it's early days. Here in the UK, confirmed cases are low, but they are rising, and health officials have said they're not all linked to travel, so that suggests that there is some community transmission. It's difficult to know if it will take off and outcompete Delta here in the UK. Over 80% of the over 12s are now double jabbed, a third are boosted. It's a national mission to accelerate that rollout. The government says its current measures they think are enough to slow the spread. We might find out in the next few days how well antibodies control or neutralise the variant in the lab, but it may take several weeks to gather enough real-world data to see how the vaccines work in reality. But even if there is a drop in protection against infection, many scientists say that they'll still provide a very good level of protection against falling seriously ill or dying.
OK, Catherine, many thanks again. Catherine de Costa there, our health correspondent. So let's have a look at the latest official figures then on the pandemic in the UK. 43,992 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. On average, 46,006 cases were reported every day in the last week. There were 54 deaths of people who died within 28 days of a positive test, which means that the average number of deaths over the past 7 days was 119. And more than 20 million people have now received their booster jab. Let's turn to the day's other main news, because a major review has been announced of the way that various agencies handled the case of Arthur Hughes, the 6-year-old who was tortured and killed by his stepmother and father 2 months after social workers had found no safeguarding concerns in the home. The review will consider how best to protect children who find themselves under threat in future, as our correspondent Sarah Campbell explains.
The house in which Arthur spent the final tortured months of his life. Close by, family and friends gathered together to remember the little boy who was made to feel that no one loved him.
Arthur, are you going to play for England?
In life, he loved school, football and superheroes. The cruelty and pain inflicted on him is almost impossible to comprehend. He was killed by his stepmother, Emma Tustin, and father, Thomas Hughes. They were jailed for 29 and 21 years, respectively. The Attorney General is looking into whether their sentences are too lenient. But were others in a position to protect him, and were warning signs missed?
Arthur raised concern. He was not a baby. He was 6 years old. He raised concern and the system did not hear him. We must listen to the voices of children.
Announced today by the Department for Education, an urgent inspection into social care, health, police and probation services in Solihull, where Arthur lived and died, and a national child safeguarding practice review into lessons to be learned to ensure best practice across England and to try and prevent another case such as this.
At the vigil today, Arthur's maternal grandmother. Neighbours are struggling to accept what happened so close to home.
For someone to be able to do anything like that, it's just crushing.
Very sad, and nothing's been learnt from baby P and little Clemmy and Peter.
Arthur's name is added to the list of children whose deaths have caused shock and outrage. The hope that lessons learned may save others. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Some 4,000 homes are still without power for a second weekend in the wake of Storm Arwen, which swept across parts of the UK and tore down electricity lines. Thousands of homes in northern England, several hundred in Scotland, are still waiting to be reconnected to their energy supplies. Our correspondent Peter Harris reports now from Northumberland.
He fetched them up.
In the nick of time, the pub has its power back. Last night, a heavy snowfall left villagers snowed in. But at least they're now warm after a week-long ordeal.
It's very eventful, long. But I said, yesterday there was a few of us in the pub and I said, I feel like we all just live together now because we've just spent that much time together in this pub.
Throughout the power cuts, the pub at Ridsdale in Northumberland had been a refuge to huddle together. The last emergency food drops were arriving today, but being reconnected is a relief.
Beautiful, I could get a shower last night, which we haven't been able to. And then, of course, they had the food on, so we came over and see, the snow just came suddenly down and that was it.
Nightmare, total nightmare. If it wasn't for here, like coming over here and that, it would be totally...
Not everyone is so lucky. Across northern England and Scotland, thousands are still without power after 9 days.
No central heating, no hot water, no showers, nothing. So it's grim for us, but I'm more worried about the elderly people.
In parts of rural Northumberland there are freezing temperatures, but there was a more upbeat progress report from Northern Power Grid today. They hope to restore power to all homes across the northeast of England by Tuesday.
We haven't seen damage like this.
There are still questions about the delays in reconnecting power supplies. Today the Business Secretary was visiting County Durham.
Completely accept that this is totally unacceptable. It's wrong. I've spoken very directly to the Northern Power Grid company, and we're going to have a review. We're going to make sure that if they have failed to invest in infrastructure, there could well be enforcement action.
As work goes on to get power back after Storm Arwen, the Met Office has now issued a new weather warning. Storm Barra is due to hit northern England and Scotland on Tuesday. Peter Harris, BBC News, Northumberland.
At least 14 people are now known to have died after a volcano erupted on the Indonesian island of Java. Officials on the island say that dozens more have been injured, with many suffering severe burns from the huge ash cloud which escaped Mount Semeru and engulfed surrounding communities, damaging buildings and killing livestock. Pope Francis has criticised what he's described as the narrow self-interest of European countries in the way that they deal with migrants. The Pope was speaking on a visit to a refugee camp on the Greek island of Lesbos, where he warned that the treatment of migrants in the Mediterranean could lead to, in his words, the shipwreck of civilization. From Lesbos, the BBC special correspondent Fergal Keane sent this report.
I love you! Papa, I love you!
They embrace the man and the message, because at this moment he is their most passionate advocate.
Pope Francis arrives at a time of renewed political crisis in Europe over the issue of migration. Since his last visit, fences have gone up. There have been pushbacks of migrants on land and at sea. And globally, there's no coherent political vision to tackle the problems of poverty and war that are driving people from their homes in their thousands.
The Pope spoke to an audience largely made up of refugees, but aimed his frustration at political leaders.
Let's
stop ignoring reality. Stop constantly shifting responsibility. Stop passing off the issue of migration to others as if it mattered to no one and was only a pointless burden to be shouldered by somebody else.
Un inutile peso che qualcuno è costretto a sovraccarsi.
It was not time to build walls, he said, or let the sea become a cemetery for children. The Pope was addressing the legacy of migrant lives lost on the journey to Europe, like 87-year-old Nehbacht Nazari from Afghanistan, and others, names unknown. There's sympathy on Lesbos for the dead, and many here helped when refugees first landed. But this farmer and local politician is critical of Pope Francis.
He promised many things for our island, none of which happened. This island has suffered greatly from migration. Tourism was hit hard. He should have helped and advocated for tourists to visit this island.
The Pope did refer to the struggles faced by local people on the EU's borders. But it was here among the thousands waiting to enter Europe that his words had most force.
I have no money, I have a very problem, no passport. Where are you going? Me.
What do you want?
I just want to be free, I just want to be freedom. I don't want anything, just freedom.
There's unlikely to be a radical political shift on migration, but the Pope has offered a robust defence of refugees, in a debate so often framed in fearful terms. Fergal Keane, BBC News, Lesbos.
Now, within the next half hour, Lewis Hamilton will start the first Saudi Arabian Grand Prix from pole position in a crucial race in the closest championship for years. His championship rival, Max Verstappen, is third on the grid. He crashed on a big qualifying lap yesterday and currently leads Hamilton by just 8 points going into this penultimate race of the season. And at Wembley, Chelsea have beaten Arsenal to win the Women's FA Cup by 3-0. The match was the culmination of last season's competition, which had been delayed because of the pandemic. And Jane Dougal reports.
The two captains from the very first Women's FA Cup final. Leslie Lloyd and Elsie Cook, touched by how far the game has come. 50 years on, the top two teams in the league, Arsenal and Chelsea, faced each other in front of a crowd of more than 40,000 at the National Stadium. Arsenal hold the record with 14 FA Cups, but they made an early mistake, gifting Chelsea's Fran Kirby with a chance.
And Chelsea are ahead.
Clear why she's the all-time top scorer for her club. From then on, it was all Chelsea. Kirby almost getting a second, but Manuela Zinsberger keeping her team in it, and frustrating Blues manager Emma Hayes. They were almost made to pay for missed chances. Erin Cuthbert appeared to handle the ball in the box, but no VAR, no penalty for Arsenal. The break only helped Chelsea focus. Sam Kerr had threatened and finally got her goal. But the Australian wasn't finished. With a taste for the Wembley atmosphere, this superb run and finish, confident it was she who had sealed the win for Chelsea. But questions will be asked of Arsenal, categorically outplayed and outclassed. COVID delayed this moment for 6 months. Chelsea happy they waited. Jane Dougal, BBC News.
And we'll be back with more news at 10 now on BBC One. It's time for the news where you are. Bye for now.